So making another video on the Bugera 333XL because the other one sounded like shit, but I'm leaving the other one up still for posterity and those that can handle having an overdriven, super loud sound. Anyway, this is the Bugera 333XL. Got a few updates on it because everybody's been asking me what the, how has this thing been doing since I haven't heard much about it. Well, you can kind of say no news is good news. It still has a broken input jack to show you the problem that I've got here. It still works, but it only works by virtue of the fact that my cords have quite a hefty weight to them because I use these big metal sleeves on them. Not like that matters, I rarely ever use that anyway. All it does is gives me a 6 decibel boost, and I'm kind of liking having a cleaner sound as of late. The clip problem seems to have resolved every other problems. No, I haven't had any problems with the tubes. Actually, I'm on my second set right here, and as we can see, they're glowing nice and healthy with no issues. So, no problems there. Another thing I keep getting asked about are my amplifier settings on this amp. So we're going to move all the way over here to the different control panels and talk about the different controls on this amp. First things first. Master volume. I use this in a very unique way. All the channels on this amp have their own volume control for the individual channel. I use these for balancing out the channels, not as a full-on volume for the actual amp. I use the master volume as what it is, a master volume. And I really never have to turn my channels up past 3. And you can see that because when I turn this up onto, you can hear the hiss with this thing on 10. So, and yes, I'm that adventurous to be in my apartment and turning a 120 watt full stack up to 10. But then I do have my volume control, and you can hear that's my volume control on my Jag Stang at 2. So we're going to turn that back down around there. There we go, to an appropriate level, and start showing more of the controls. So yeah, I use this at different settings depending upon the venue I'm playing. At rehearsal, I sometimes have it all the way up around here, anywhere from 7 to 10, depending on what kit Gary's using that day, because sometimes Gary's kit tends to kick the shit out of everything in the room. Other times I have it halfway, particularly at gigs I turn it up about halfway because it tends to be too loud, and the sound engineer then ends up complaining that my amp is way too loud. Most of the time at home, if I even use this thing at home, which I seldom do because it's pretty freaking loud even on a 1x12 cab like we're using here, I have it at 1 or 2, around there. And even then, it's still pretty hard to keep it contained. I would not play this thing at like 9 o'clock at night at all, especially on a weeknight. Over here's my presence control. To show you what a presence control does. It brings out more of the highs. Like my sound's a lot twangier like that, almost like a single coil, and that's an EMG humbucker. If I back it down here, it sounds more chunky. I usually have it up around in this area somewhere. Usually up a little bit higher if I'm using the amp on a lower speaker, because I find it needs more presence when it's turned down lower. And then of course we have my reverb control, which flat out is like so yeah, that's my reverb, the way it's set. I usually have this just a little over 5. And I only ever use it on the clean channel, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. Clean channel, you got your channel changing button over here. You got low, mid, high, and volume. My volume almost never leaves 1 or 2 on this thing. I mean, this thing's got so much volume on the clean channel, it's ridiculous. With the master on 10 and the volume on 2, I'm already too loud for most venues. On treble, I usually have my treble set either up at midway, or in this case I've got it a little further over, but that's generally where I have it. Enough to give me a good bit of cut, but not where I've got, you know, it's so high that's chuck razor blade at your ear kind of tone. So I keep it around there, around 6 or 7. Keep the mid-range just a little bit underward on the clean, because I like that sparkly kind of Fender sound. I find with mid-range too low, though, it doesn't cut enough, and with the mid-range too high, it sounds a little too papery and grainy, so I tend to keep it just a little bit below 5. That's what I prefer. For lows about 5 or 6. I don't like too much low end on the clean channel because then it tends to eat up my other signals a little too much. Let's screw over here to crunch. Crunch I have set up for an Edward Van Halen-y kind of tone, you know, that sort of brown soundish sort of deal. That kind of thing. So I have my volume set usually around 3. It goes up to 5 sometimes, because I find on this amplifier the channels are not too consistent between each other as far as volume goes. Actually, the higher the channel you go, the more volume you might need to actually keep it going, especially at higher master volume settings. I try to make all my channels balanced with each other so they're all same volume to the human ear, not to some decibel meter. Over here is the treble, which is just maybe a hair over halfway. Mid-range is cranked up a little more, and the bass is cranked up a little more. I usually crank all 3 of them up around the same level like that, because it gives it a good bit of plenty bit of thick chunk, but it's got that, but it keeps my low ends really tight. And another thing to keep the low ends tight is I keep the gain rather conservative on this channel, and I use this channel primarily with the Jag Stang and with guitars with humbuckers. Reason being, it's not so gainy that it starts to sound like mush, but it's not so under distorted like some amps would tend to do at a lower volume, that I don't have enough crunch to make notes sing out and play really long. So that's why I have it set like I do. The XL switch is usually off. Sometimes I turn it on if I need a little more bottom end oomph to it. You know, need a little more chunk to the sound. And then the next channel up is, of course, the lead channel, which activates my noise gate over here, which is all the way up all the time. It cuts out a pretty good bit of the noise. You can see when I turn it up, I'm picking up all the stuff from the lamp up here. But I use this channel primarily with my single coil guitars, like my Mustang and my Telecaster. I've got the volume is usually set to 3 or 5 on this, sometimes 6 if needed. Treble is cut down just a little bit, because with single coils I tend to find the highs are too high and it still sounds too brittle, so I'll back it down a little bit to get a little more warmth. Leave the mid-range about midway, and then have the bass cranked up the same amount as I do on that channel. And then over here I have the gain up at the same level as that channel, maybe a little bit higher, and the XL switch on to give a little more lows. That's how I get a chunky sound out of a single coil guitar like a Mustang or a Telecaster or a Strat, and that's exactly what I use that sound for. Allow me to swap guitars over to, say, my 66 Fender Mustang. For the last little bit of this vid, I'll show you. I mean, you play that Mustang on this channel, it's like... That's a Mustang on the crunch channel. Put it on the lead, and it's like, you know...